Mr. Secretary, I want to start by thanking you for your recent visit to my district. After my constituents were attacked by a terrorist, you brought calm and comfort, and I have been very encouraged by our discussions that DOD is doing everything necessary to ensure that we have a productive, safe, working environment for our service members and the service members that we host from foreign countries. And so I thank you for that great progress. I also want to thank you for the development of this budget that seems to prioritize our near-peer adversaries. There are enhancements in research, development, test, and evaluation dollars. We're particularly proud of that mission at Eglin Air Force Base, where the eastern Gulf of Mexico is an unparalleled range. There's money in the budget to enhance our ranges, and it's my hope that the department will continue to maintain the strong position opposed to offshore oil drilling, which is not consistent with the launching of experimental missiles, which is, I can't believe something I have to say out loud, but indeed it is. And so thank you for that great work. As the department is raising its gaze under your leadership to meet those challenges of the future against our near-peer adversaries, it's notable to me that we have deconflicted in Syria from what was U.S. involvement in a Syrian civil war with tremendous sectarian violence. In this budget you've presented to us, is there an expectation that our nation would re-engage in the Syrian civil war?
There has not been that discussion about re-engaging in the civil war. We think the best path forward is through the UN process that is underway. And that needs to be pursued vigorously. I know the State Department is pushing that as well, and obviously this situation has become a lot more complicated in Idlib province right now, given the confluence of many actors.
And in our current role, securing oil fields so that the Kurds are able to maintain their own resistance and to have resources to do that, is it our expectation in this budget that we would be funding efforts to reinsert Americans on the Turkish-Syria border in that area where Americans were previously withdrawn?
Our current mission, Congressman, is to ensure the continuing defeat of ISIS in that eastern portion of Syria, working alongside our SDF partners. That happens on a daily basis. At this point in time, I don't see any likelihood that we would be back along the border, if you will. That's
great news. And General Milley, I recall a conversation we had where you informed me that the only correct decision in your mind that the president could have made was the decision the president in fact did make, to take the tens of Americans on the Syria-Turkey border and to remove them from that conflict zone. Is that still your position?
It is, and I would just reinforce what the Secretary said. Our mission remains, primary mission remains a counter-ISIS mission there in the eastern parts of Syria, and to my knowledge there's no intent nor plans to reengage in the Syrian civil war, nor put troops back on the Syrian-Turkish border. Again,
great news. I very much look forward to the Trump presidency being one where we end our involvement in some of these wars rather than reigniting new conflicts in new places for newfound reasons that distract us from that important national security strategy focus that I think the two of you have led quite deftly. In budgetary times, we're always looking forward, but at times it's appropriate to look back at the decisions the Congress has made and determine whether or not we've got the right focus. And I'm specifically referencing House Joint Resolution 77, which was supported by most of the members of this committee, Republican and Democrat, and it was very critical of the administration's decision to disengage from that civil war. And specifically in the whereas clause of that resolution, it says, whereas an abrupt withdrawal of United States military personnel from certain parts of northeast Syria is beneficial to the adversaries of the United States government. I'm wondering if you concur with that statement, or now with the benefit of hindsight, we could say that disengaging from that conflict zone actually was beneficial to the United States government and our position.
I think from a military standpoint, we had two Special Forces ODAs, a very small amount of forces that were facing off against 15,000 Turkish troops, and they were going to come across that border. They were prepared to come across that border. They told us to come across that border, and we had very, very little choice except to remove them from the avenues of attack that the Turks were going to do. Otherwise, we would have unnecessarily jeopardized their lives for no purpose.
And given that decision that we made, I think very correctly, despite the fact that many of my colleagues disagree with it, I agree with it, are we sensing that there is some insurmountable resurgence of ISIS that we're not prepared to deal with as a consequence of that sound decision?
We know that ISIS, the caliphate, the physical entity, has been eliminated. We also know that ISIS as an organization is not yet destroyed. They have broken down into small groups, and they're continuing to conduct insurgency and terrorist operations in a very disparate and disaggregated way. But they are no longer the threat that they were just a year ago.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.